The city of London in the Middle Ages was unlike the shining capital we imagine today. It was a place of wood and stone, of smoke and mud, of noise and silence entwined. The skyline was marked not by towering glass, but by the sharp spire of churches, the looming walls of the tower, and the crooked roofs of houses that leaned so close together their upper floors nearly touched. When the sun rose above the Thames, light spilled down narrow lanes, catching on smoke that curled from chimneys, gilding the water that flowed sluggish and dark. The air was alive with movement carts rattling across uneven cobbles, market stalls creaking open, voices rising in 100 tones. Yet, beneath the energy lay something harsher, a constant struggle for survival, a life shaped by hunger, disease, and toil. Imagine yourself stepping into these streets. The ground beneath your feet is soft with mud and refuse, the smell sharp with waste. Timber houses tower above, their beams darkened with soot, their walls whitewashed but stained by years of weather. Ropes hang between them with drying clothes. Shadows flicker as shutters open, and the city begins another day. This is medieval London. It is crowded, it is alive, and for the ordinary person, it is unforgiving. The streets of medieval London were not wide boulevards. They were narrow, twisting lanes, pressed tight between crooked houses that seemed to bend inward as though ready to collapse upon the passers-by. In many places, two men could barely walk side by side without their shoulders brushing the timber walls. Beneath your feet lies not stone but mud, churned soft by rain, sticky with refuse. Horses trot through it, their hooves splashing filth onto anyone nearby. Wooden carts creak under loads of firewood, grain, or waste, their wheels sinking deep into the mire. Dogs scavenge among the debris, chickens dart between boots, and pigs snuffle freely, rooting through the muck. The air is thick with smell. Smoke from countless hearths drifts low, mingling with the stench of dung, rotting food, and stagnant water. Every breath carries the city's mixture of life and decay. For those who live here, it is normal. For us, it would be overwhelming. Vendors shout their wares, their voices sharp above the din. A fishmonger calls out the morning's catch, the scales still glistening. A baker offers loaves pulled fresh from the oven, their crusts brown and cracked, the smell sweet above the street's foulness. A peddler shakes a bundle of onions, while another waves strips of cloth dyed in faded colors. Each stall fights for attention, each merchant's cry competing with the clatter of wheels and the bray of animals. Children run barefoot through the crowd, their laughter rising above the noise. Some carry jugs of water from the public wells, their small hands struggling with the weight. Others chase each other, splashing mud, dodging carts. Women scold them, their voices carrying from open doorways where they scrub clothes or stir pots over smoky fires. Above, shutters creak open. A servant empties a chamber pot into the street, its contents splashing into the muck below. It is not unusual. Waste and water alike are thrown into the lanes, left to flow toward the Thames or soak into the earth. The smell lingers, rising with the heat of the day. The press of people never ends. Merchants, craftsmen, laborers, beggars move through the same narrow paths, their steps slowed by the crowd. Arguments break out, voices raised, hands gesturing angrily. A cart is stuck, its wheel caught in mud, and men strain to free it while others curse the delay. The city is never still, never quiet. To walk these streets is to feel surrounded by bodies, by sound, by smell. There is no escape, no clean air, no open space. For those who live here, it is ordinary. For you, it would be suffocating. And yet, this was the heart of medieval London, a crowded maze of mud and noise, where survival meant navigating not only hunger and work, but the very streets themselves. In medieval London, food was not abundance, it was survival. For the poor, meals were not feasts, but necessities, plain, repetitive, and often unsatisfying. Each bite was less about flavor and more about endurance, fuel to carry a body through another day of toil. Imagine the morning in a cramped wooden house. The fire has burned low overnight, leaving only faint embers in the hearth. A woman crouches to stir them, coaxing sparks into flame with scraps of wood. Onto the fire, she sets a small iron pot filled with water, grains, and perhaps a few chopped vegetables if fortune has been kind. The smell is earthy, simple, and faintly sour. This is breakfast, a thin pottage, a watery porridge that warms the stomach but rarely satisfies. Bread is the true staple. It is coarse, dark, and heavy, baked from rye or barley rather than fine wheat. Each loaf is dense, gritty with husks, its crust hard, its interior tough. Teeth wear down on such bread, gums ache, yet it fills the stomach for a time. Families tear it into chunks, dipping it into broth, softening it before swallowing. Sometimes it is stale, days old, but it must be eaten all the same. To drink, there is little choice but ale or beer, brewed weak and sour. Water from the Thames is foul, carrying waste from every street and house. To drink it is to risk sickness. So even children sip the ale, low in alcohol, but safer than water. Its taste bitter, its texture cloudy. Jugs are passed around, lips pressing to the same rim, the sourness clinging to the tongue. On rare days, meat might appear a scrap of salted pork, a bone boiled into soup, a piece of fish brought from the river. Eggs or cheese are occasional luxuries, treasured when they can be afforded. More often, meals are made of beans, onions, and cabbage, simmered together into a single pot that sits all day upon the hearth. Its contents shared among the family until nothing remains but watery broth. Hunger is constant. A man might eat his fill of bread at dawn, only to feel his stomach gnawing again before midday. A woman works the day with an ache in her belly, her children tugging at her skirts, asking for more than she has. The poor live on the edge of want, never starving entirely, but never satisfied either. Markets provide variety, but not for everyone. Stalls overflow with apples, pears, eels from the Thames, chickens clucking in cages, but prices are beyond the reach of most. A laborer stares at the roasted meats turning slowly over a fire, their juices dripping into the flames, the smell rich and tempting. He swallows his hunger and turns away, knowing he must make do with bread and broth once again. And yet, food is more than fuel. At the end of the day, families gather around the fire, bowls in hand, sharing whatever small meal has been prepared. They talk, they laugh softly, they comfort their children. Even coarse bread becomes precious when shared. In the darkest hunger, these moments of togetherness are what sustain them most. For us today, such meals would feel harsh, meager, and unchanging. We expect variety, sweetness, spice. For the poor of medieval London, survival was built on repetition, bread, pottage, and ale, day after day, year after year. And so they endured, not with abundance, but with enough. enough to rise each morning, enough to labor, enough to live another day in the crowded, unyielding city. From dawn until dusk, every sound of the city echoed with labor hammers striking, wheels grinding, voices calling, fires crackling. For most, work was not a calling, nor a source of pride. It was survival, the only way to keep hunger at bay. Step into the lanes at sunrise, and you will see the city awaken through its trades. Sparks leap from iron as his hammer strikes, each blow echoing through the street. His arms are heavy with muscle, his face blackened by soot. He shapes nails, horseshoes, and tools, his sweat mingling with ash. Nearby, a baker slides loaves into a clay oven, its heat spilling into the street. The stench clings to his skin, making him an outcast even among neighbors. A carpenter planes wood, his floor scattered with curls of shavings, shaping beams for houses that lean and creak. The streets are alive with noise. Porters strain beneath crates of grain, sacks of wool, barrels of ale, their backs bent and faces red. The clang of metal, the creak of wheels, the cry of hawkers selling onions, fish, or scraps of cloth all blend into a constant din. For women, labor never ends. At dawn, they rise to grind grain, their arms moving in endless circles over stone corns, turning wheat into coarse flour. They fetch water from public wells, balancing jars upon hips or shoulders, the load heavy and the path crowded. They tend to children, patch clothes, mend nets, spin wool, or join their husbands in workshops, their hands blistered and raw. Even in the evening, their work continues, stirring pots over smoky fires, scrubbing floors, sweeping filth from doorways. Rest is brief, fleeting, always interrupted by new tasks. Children, too, labor early. Some carry messages across the crowded city, weaving barefoot through the mud. Their childhoods lost to necessity. Guilds regulate much of this work. Each trade has its rules, its apprentices, its masters, but beneath the order lies constant hardship. A craftsman may be skilled, his hands precise, his work admired, still he lives in a crooked house, still he coughs from smoke, still he eats coarse bread. Work is not only in shops and markets. Laborers are hired by the day to dig ditches, to haul stones, to mend streets. Their pay is a few coins, barely enough to keep a family fed. If no work is found, they return home empty-handed, their children hungry, their wives anxious. There is no safety, no cushion, no certainty. Every day begins with the same question: will there be work? The rhythm of the city is constant, unyielding. The clang of hammers fades only with nightfall, replaced by the murmur of taverns, the crackle of hearths, the quiet sighs of exhaustion. Not a choice, but a chain binding them to the city, to hunger, to survival. For us today, it may seem unbearable to wake with the sun, to toil until dark, to rest only briefly before it begins again. Yet, for medieval Londoners, it was simply existence. Work was not extraordinary, it was everything. In medieval London, the burden of survival did not rest on men alone. Women and children carried their share, often in silence, often without recognition. Their days were long, their nights restless, and their lives marked by both fragility and resilience. For women, work began before dawn. They rose in the dark, stirring ashes to coax flame from yesterday's fire. With smoke stinging their eyes, they ground grain by hand, the heavy stones turning endlessly, muscles aching, flour gritty beneath their nails. They drew water from public wells, jars heavy upon their backs or balanced on their hips, weaving through crowded streets before the city was fully awake. In the home, they tended to children, cooked what little food could be found, and patched clothes worn thin by labor. They spun wool into yarn, wove cloth, or stitched garments by candlelight, their eyes strained by flickering flame. Many worked beside their husbands in workshops, kneading dough in bakeries, scraping hides in tanneries, or selling goods in noisy markets. Their hands blistered, their backs bent, their bodies never at rest. Childbearing was constant and perilous. Women bore many children, but few survived infancy. Disease, hunger, and poor sanitation claimed lives quickly. Mothers risked their own lives with each birth, lacking medicine, relying only on the skill of midwives and the prayers of neighbors. Death in childbirth was common, yet each new life was greeted with hope, a fragile flame against the darkness of loss. Children, when they lived, did not remain children for long. From the moment they could walk, they carried burdens, fetching water, gathering firewood, chasing geese through muddy lanes. By 7 or 8, many were apprenticed, their small hands sweeping workshops, feeding fires, or learning trades. Some worked in taverns, serving ale to strangers. Others followed their parents into fields or markets. Their laughter echoed in the streets, but behind it lay duty, responsibility pressed upon them too soon. For the poorest children were not only workers, but a fragile defense against hunger. Their labor added coins to the household, their wages meager, though they work, bread upon the table. To lose a child to sickness was not only heartbreak, but also the loss of hands that had helped keep the family alive. And yet, even in hardship, life flickered with moments of tenderness. Mothers hummed lullabies as they rocked infants in their arms, their voices soft against the background noise of the city. Children played with hoops, sticks, and rag dolls, their games spilling into muddy lanes, their laughter rising above the din of carts and cries. Neighbors shared care, one woman watching the children of another, weaving a fragile network of support in a world that gave little else. For us, such lives seem unbearably heavy. Women working without rest, children pressed into labor before their childhood began. But for medieval London, this was simply the way of things. Duty fell upon every member of the household. Survival was a task shared, and even the smallest hands carried weight. And so, day after day, women and children endured. Their labor, their care, their quiet strength built the rhythm of the city, unseen yet essential, fragile yet enduring, always at the edge of hunger and loss. In medieval London, life was harsh, uncertain, and fragile. Disease, hunger, and accident hovered close to every household. In such a world, faith was not only belief, was a lifeline, the invisible thread that held the city together. The church stood at the heart of daily existence, its bells marking time, its words shaping thought, its rituals guiding every passage from birth to death. Imagine the sound of morning in London, before merchants open stalls, before smiths strike hammers. The bell of the parish church rings out across the streets. Its deep, resonant tone cuts through the noise of animals and carts, calling the faithful to prayer. Men pause on their way to work. Women bow their heads as they grind grain. Children cross themselves clumsily. The rhythm of the day begins not with labor, but with the church. The city was filled with churches, stone and timber buildings, rising above the crooked houses, their spires pointing heavenward. Inside, the air was cool and dim, thick with the scent of incense. Candles flickered, casting light upon carved crucifixes and painted saints. Here, Londoners sought comfort, forgiveness, and meaning. Life was steeped in ritual. Baptism welcomed infants, confirming their place, not only in the family, but in the eternal order. Marriage bound couples beneath the watch of God, their union blessed before the community. Death, inevitable and frequent, was marked by bells, prayers, and burial in consecrated ground. The final hope of salvation guiding even the poorest soul into eternity. Sin was ever present, a shadow over daily life. The church reminded all that each lie, each theft, each unkind word carried eternal consequence. Yet it also offered forgiveness. Confessions whispered to priests, penances performed with bowed heads, coins dropped into alms boxes. Salvation could be sought in prayer, in pilgrimage, in gifts to the church. For many, this was the only comfort that though their lives were harsh, heaven promised rest. The calendar itself was shaped by faith. Feasts and fasts, saints' days, and holy seasons marked the year. Lent brought abstinence, Easter brought joy, Christmas brought light in the darkest winter. Work paused for festivals when processions wound through the streets. Banners flying, chants rising, communities gathering in shared devotion. The church was also authority. Priests guided not only the spirit, but the daily order of life. They taught obedience, humility, and endurance. They spoke of heaven and hell with equal force, reminding the poor that their suffering was part of God's plan, that their patience would be rewarded in eternity. They urged generosity from the rich, piety from the powerful, submission from all. For us today, it may be difficult to grasp such all-encompassing influence, but for medieval Londoners, faith was as real as hunger, as present as disease. It explained the unexplainable. Why crops failed, why illness spread, why life was short. It gave reason to suffering and promise to endurance. In a city of mud, filth, and fear, the church's walls offered a space of calm, of order, of hope. Its bells carried reassurance through crowded lanes. Its prayers whispered comfort to weary souls. Its rituals gave meaning to lives otherwise consumed by toil. And so, beneath the spires, within the smoky streets, the people endured holding tightly to faith, for without it, there was little to hold at all. In the crowded streets of medieval London, illness was never far. Even before the Great Plague, sickness lingered in every corner, coughs that rattled, fevers that burned, sores that never healed. But when the Black Death came, it was unlike anything the city had known. It swept through the lanes like a shadow, silent at first, then unstoppable. Imagine the city as it was before. The markets crowded, the bells ringing, the taverns alive with chatter. Then, slowly, whispers spread. A neighbor coughs blood into his hand. A child grows feverish overnight and is gone by morning. A merchant does not return to his stall, his shutters closed, his door barred. The people watch and wait, fear settling into their bones. The plague came with a rhythm of dread. First, swellings beneath the skin, painful lumps that rose in the armpits or groin. Then fever, shivers, and delirium. The body grew weak, the skin mottled, dark with death's approach. Within days, life slipped away, too fast for prayers, too cruel for farewells. Families broke apart in fear. Friends abandoned one another. The city itself seemed to hold its breath. The streets, once filled with laughter, grew quiet. Carts rolled slowly, piled with the dead, wheels cutting deep into the mud. The sound of bells changed. No longer the call to prayer, but the toll of death, ringing again and again as graves were dug. In churchyards, earth opened too quickly to be filled with care. Pits were dug wide, bodies lowered together, layer upon layer of silence and grief. The smell of incense clung to the air as priests walked the streets, holding crosses high, murmuring prayers that many feared could no longer protect them. Processions of the faithful wound through alleys, barefoot, chanting, hoping to drive away the pestilence with devotion. But still the sickness spread, as if the very air carried death. In the workers' houses, despair lingered. Mothers clutched their children close, whispering prayers as fevers rose. Fathers sat in silence, knowing they could do nothing but wait. Neighbors knocked softly on doors, offering food or simply words, but often they found no one left inside. And yet, even amid the shadow, life persisted. Bakers still baked, smiths still hammered, merchants still bartered, though fear sharpened every glance. The need to live, to eat, to endure, carried the city forward, even as death claimed its share. For us, the plague is a story of the past, numbers in a history book. For medieval Londoners, it was a presence unseen, unstoppable, inescapable. It reminded them, with each tolling bell, that life was fragile, that tomorrow was uncertain, that faith and endurance were all they had. The plague passed, but its shadow never left. It remained in memory, in fear, in the silence of empty houses and the bones buried beneath the earth. London endured, scarred but unbroken, forever changed by the plague's dark hand. To live in medieval London was to be surrounded by sound and smell, every moment, every hour. The city did not know silence, nor did it know fresh air. Its rhythm was one of constant noise and lingering odor, a mixture of life and decay that clung to every street and home. Imagine standing at the corner of a narrow lane. The first sound you hear is the toll of a church bell, heavy and solemn, cutting through the morning mist. Its deep tone marks the hour, calling people to prayer, to labor, to awareness of time passing. Soon, other sounds join in the wooden wheels of carts grinding over cobbles, the iron-shod hooves of horses striking mud, the crack of whips urging them forward. From every side, voices rise. Vendors cry out their wares, each louder than the next. A fishmonger sings of fresh catch from the Thames, his words carrying the sharp temps of river smell. A woman calls out onions and leeks, her voice strong and steady. Children chase through the crowd, shouting to one another, their laughter blending with the curses of porters struggling with heavy loads. At the blacksmith's forge, hammers ring upon iron, sparks leaping into the air. The sound is sharp, metallic, echoing down the street. From the baker's shop comes the crackle of fire and the scrape of paddles pushing loaves into the oven. Chickens cluck and squawk, pigs grunt in the muck, dogs bark and snarl over scraps. The city is a chorus without rest, and with the noise comes the smell. Smoke hangs heavy from 1,000 hearths, its scent of burning wood and peat clinging to every garment, every wall. From the tanneries drifts a stench of rotting hides and lime, so strong that neighbors turn away in disgust. The butcher's stalls bleed into the air, the metallic temps of fresh meat mixed with the sweetness of decay. Fish lie on wooden boards, their scent sharp and sour as the day warms. Waste fills the streets. Chamber pots, emptied from windows, splash into the lanes below, mingling with mud and straw, carried slowly toward the Thames. The river itself, broad and slow, smells of life and filth alike, its waters filled with refuse from every workshop and household. Yet not all smells are foul. Walk past a baker's stall, and the warm, nutty scent of bread cuts through the stench. Near a spice merchant, rare aromas drifts, cinnamon, pepper, saffron, precious and costly, reminders of distant lands. In taverns, the yeasty sweetness of ale fills the air, mingling with roasted meat on festival days. Amid the smoke and filth, pockets of comfort still linger. For those who lived in London, these sounds and smells were ordinary, unnoticed through familiarity. But for us, they would be overwhelming, the constant din, the unending mixture of odors. There was no escape, no silence, no fresh air to clear the senses. The city pressed itself into every breath, every ear, every moment of the day. And yet, within this chaos, there was a strange kind of order. The bells told time. The smells reminded all of labor, of hunger, of survival. London lived through its noise and its odors, and its people endured as they always had. While most of London lived in mud, hunger, and noise, another world existed, one of wealth, silk, feasts, and power. The city's nobles and successful merchants moved through life with a confidence unknown to the poor, their days softened by privilege, their nights warmed by abundance. To glimpse their world is to see a mirror image of the worker's struggle, a contrast so sharp it feels like two separate cities. Imagine a noble's hall. The walls are built of stone, solid and high, with tapestries hanging to keep out the cold and to display wealth. Torchlight flickers across colorful cloth embroidered with hunting scenes, saints, and family crests. The floor is strewn with fresh rushes, scattered with herbs to sweeten the air. At the high table, beneath carved beams, the Lord sits surrounded by family and guests. Before them lies a feast. Roasted swan, venison, spiced pies, bowls of fruit, platters of cheese. Golden goblets hold sweet wine from distant vineyards. Silver platters shine in the firelight. Musicians play softly in the corner, their lutes and flutes weaving gentle tunes that drift across the hall. The merchants, though not noble by birth, build lives that rival them. Their houses stand tall along the city's main streets, their shutters painted bright, bales of wool, barrels of wine, silks from the east, spices that glow with scent and color. They walk through the streets in fur-lined cloaks, rings glinting on their fingers, servants carrying their wares behind them. While the poor eat coarse rye bread and onion stew, nobles and merchants dine on white wheat loaves, soft and airy. They drink wines rich and sweet, flavored with honey or herbs. Their meat is plentiful, chickens roasted with spices, fish served with sauces, pork and lamb cooked in ways that fill the air with aroma. At festivals, they host banquets that last for hours, tables groaning with food that most Londoners could only dream of. Clothing, too, marks the divide. Where the poor wear patched tunics of wool, nobles dress in garments dyed deep blue or crimson, lined with fur for warmth, embroidered with gold thread. Merchants display their success in velvet, silk, and carefully tailored cloaks. Even the smallest detail, a clasp of silver, a belt of worked leather, speaks of wealth. Yet privilege comes with its own burdens. Nobles live under the weight of politics. Marriages are arranged to strengthen alliances. Children promise to families they barely know. Behind the banquets and hunts, whispers of rivalry and betrayal are constant. Merchants, though prosperous, depend on trade routes, on weather, on wars in distant lands. A single lost shipment can undo years of fortune. For the poor, this glittering world feels impossibly distant. They may glimpse it in parades, when nobles ride through the streets on horseback, their banners fluttering, their servants clearing the way. Or they may smell it when feasts are prepared, the aromas spilling into alleys where hunger sharpens the contrast. To stand in the mud and see silk sweep past is to be reminded of one's place, of the gulf between those who survive and those who thrive. Still, both worlds depend upon each other. The wealth of nobles and merchants is built upon the labor of those who till fields, forge iron, carry loads. The suffering of the many sustains the luxury of the few. And so, in medieval London, the divide stands stark and undeniable. Two lives lived side by side, yet separated by walls of stone, by gold and mud alike. In a city as crowded and restless as medieval London, crime was inevitable. Hunger drove men to steal. Desperation turned neighbors against each other. And in the press of narrow streets, the line between survival and lawbreaking was thin. Yet justice in this world was not gentle. It was swift, public, and harsh, meant not only to punish, but to remind every soul of the cost of disobedience. Imagine the marketplace at midday. Crowds press around stalls, heavy with goods, apples, onions, rolls of cloth. A man, gaunt and hollow-eyed, slips a loaf of bread into his cloak. The baker shouts, his hand seizing the thief's arm. In moments, neighbors gather, voices rising in anger. There is no hiding. Every act of theft is seen, and every thief is dragged before the authorities. The punishments vary. For small crimes, there are stocks wooden frames where a man's head and hands are locked in place. There he sits, exposed to the jeers of the crowd, pelted with mud, spoiled food, or sharp words. For others, there are whippings, the crack of leather echoing in the street as flesh burns and men cry out. To be whipped is not only pain, but shame, the memory carried in scars and whispers. For greater crimes, punishment is final. The gallows rise at Tyburn or Smithfield, tall wooden frames where ropes dangle in the wind. There, thieves, murderers, and traitors meet their end before a crowd. The condemned is led through the streets, a procession of silence and dread. At the foot of the scaffold, prayers are said, confessions murmured. Then the rope is placed, the trap opens, and life ends. The crowd watches, silent at first, then murmuring, reminded that the law spares no one. There are darker punishments still. Those accused of treason may face execution by fire, or worse, their bodies displayed as warnings upon city gates. Criminals are sometimes branded, their skin marked forever with the sign of their crime. Women may be dragged through the streets, their shame made public. Children who steal may face the same punishments as grown men, for mercy is rare. Prisons exist, but they are not places of reform. They are dark, damp cells beneath city walls, where chains rattle and air stinks of filth. Prisoners rely on relatives to bring food, for the jailers do not provide it freely. Many waste away in silence, forgotten long before judgment comes. And yet, amid such severity, justice was seen as essential. In a city of thousands, order had to be kept. Fear of punishment kept men in line, just as much as faith or hunger did. to the people of London, these spectacles were reminders that life was fragile, that obedience was survival, that the city's peace was paid for in public suffering. For us today, such punishments feel brutal, almost unimaginable. But for medieval Londoners, they were part of the rhythm of life. The sound of a whip, the sight of a scaffold, the murmur of a crowd at an execution, these were as common as the toll of church bells, woven into the city's heartbeat. London endured not through mercy, but through fear. And in the shadow of that fear, people continued to live, to work, to pray, always mindful of the law's heavy hand. Though centuries have passed, medieval London has never fully disappeared. The narrow lanes, the smoky hearths, the cries of vendors, and the tolling bells all left traces that echo faintly even today. Beneath the modern streets, archaeologists uncover fragments of that older world: clay pipes, shards of pottery, iron nails blackened by time. Each piece whispers of lives lived in struggle and in endurance. The city grew from its hardships. The crowded streets of timber and mud gave way, in time, to broader avenues and sturdier stone. Fires, plagues, and famine scarred it, yet from each wound it rebuilt, shaping itself anew. The churches rose higher, the markets grew busier, the walls stretched further. The rhythm of survival, forged in those medieval years, carried the city forward into centuries of change. What remains most striking is the resilience of its people. The poor who scraped by on bread and ale, the women who worked from dawn until night, the children who carried burdens far beyond their years, all played their part in holding the city together. They endured not with comfort, but with stubborn persistence. Their names are not recorded in chronicles, yet their labor laid the foundation for all that came after. The plague passed, the gallows fell silent, the mud streets were paved, but the memory of their struggles lingers. Medieval London teaches us that greatness is not only built by kings and nobles, but by countless unseen lives, endured one day at a time. Now, imagine the city at night. The shouts of vendors have faded, the forges are quiet, and the taverns grow dim. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys, curling into the dark sky. The Thames flows silently beneath the moon, carrying with it the whispers of the day. In the narrow houses, families lie close together, their bodies weary, their breath steady. Children murmur in dreams. Women rest their tired hands. Men release the weight of labor for a few brief hours. Outside, the streets are empty, save for the flicker of a lantern or the distant toll of a bell. The city is hushed, wrapped in stillness. Close your eyes and feel that same quiet. The burdens of the day fade. The noise of the city drifts away. The air grows calm. Let the past rest in silence as you too find rest. The story of medieval London softens into darkness. The streets are still. The bells are silent. And in that calm, you may drift into sleep,